The power of unreadability. They tell you intelligence is about knowledge, books, degrees, logic, reason. That's only the surface. True intelligence, dark intelligence, is about knowing how to think in silence, how to see what others miss, and how to remain unreadable while reading everyone in the room. The loudest mind is never the most dangerous. The one who sits quietly, watching, waiting, that's the one who holds the leash. When your presence carries weight without noise, you've crossed into another category of power. And this category doesn't demand attention, it absorbs it. Not because you try, but because you've become too difficult to define. Dark intelligence is not taught. It's sharpened through betrayal, silence, isolation, and cold observation. It begins the day you stop reacting emotionally and start responding strategically. When you realize that most people speak to be heard, but say nothing. That most advice is manipulation wrapped in kindness. That smiles can hide motives, and apologies can be rehearsed. It is in this shift, this detachment, where your intelligence starts to evolve. You don't get louder. You get quieter. You speak less. You say only what sharpens your image. Every word becomes a weapon or a shield, never a leak. Your ability to manipulate is not the goal. Your ability to resist manipulation is. Emotional discipline is the first pillar of dark intelligence. When they provoke, you pause. When they guilt trip, you smile. When they twist truth, you untangle it without raising your voice. Control is not force. Control is the absence of reaction when they expect it. The moment they realize they can't predict you, you become a threat. And threats are either feared, respected, or both. The next level? Pattern recognition. People repeat. Even liars are consistent. They lie in rhythm. They apologize in rhythm. Their stories evolve in patterns. Dark intelligence notices the glitch in that rhythm. It watches a person's words while remembering their actions. It tests. It withholds. It lets people expose themselves without pressure. You don't accuse, you observe. You don't chase answers, you create silence that makes lies uncomfortable. And then, when the mask slips, you say nothing. Because people don't fear the one who catches them. They fear the one who caught them and said nothing. Most people give away their intelligence by proving it. They want to be right. You let others underestimate you. You play simple. You hide your depth. Because you understand. When people think they have you figured out, they lower their guard. That's when the shift happens. Dark intelligence is invisible until it isn't. And by the time they feel it, you've already made your move. This intelligence also teaches you when to disappear. Power doesn't always mean staying. Sometimes it means removing your energy and letting the absence echo louder than any speech. A dark mind understands the currency of distance. The world chases those who withhold. So, you let people feel what access to you truly meant by taking it away. The final rule? Never act from emotion. Act from observation. Dark intelligence is not heartless, but it never lets the heart lead. Feel, but don't obey your feelings. Watch, but don't worship what you see. Move, but never explain where or why. The less they know, the more they respect. The less you show, the more they wonder. Mystery is not an aesthetic, it's a strategy. Let your presence confuse. Let your silence intimidate. Let your calm destroy their assumptions. That is dark intelligence. The art of becoming unreadable while reading everything. Strategic invisibility. The smartest move is not always being seen. It's being impossible to track, impossible to predict, and impossible to pin down. Strategic invisibility isn't about hiding. It's about controlling exposure, showing just enough to keep attention but never enough to give anyone power over you. Because the moment people think they understand you, they try to manage you, measure you, and use you. So, dark intelligence stays 3 moves ahead by becoming unreadable, blending in while gathering leverage, disappearing in plain sight while building position, speaking only when it bends the environment in your favor. You must learn to detach from visibility. Let others chase noise and validation while you sharpen silence and calculation. The one who doesn't show his plan controls those who reveal theirs too early, and in every power structure, the invisible one becomes the unseen architect, not because they're quiet, but because they've made themselves too rare, too self-contained, too disciplined to need attention, and in a world addicted to display, that's what makes you lethal. Emotional immunity. They can't control you unless they can move you emotionally. And that's why dark intelligence builds immunity, not by killing emotions, but by mastering the space between feeling and reaction, because power lives in that pause, in that cold second where everyone else would break, speak, beg, or retaliate. But you don't. You observe the emotion without obeying it. You feel the heat without letting it leak. And in that stillness, you become untouchable. Emotional immunity means they can insult you and you don't flinch, guilt you and you don't bend, tempt you and you don't bite, because your actions are no longer dictated by provocation. They're driven by outcome. And the one who can be calm while others rage is always the one in charge, not because he has no feelings, but because he keeps them chained behind his discipline. And in a world full of reactors, the one who controls his internal weather controls everyone else's storm. The art of psychological reversal. When someone tries to manipulate you, argue with you, or pull you into their game, don't fight back. Just flip the frame and let them drown in their own tactic. Dark intelligence knows how to absorb pressure and redirect it like a mirror, turning the manipulator into the manipulated without ever raising your voice. You ask calm questions when they expect chaos. You change the topic when they expect a defense. And you nod in silence while they try to provoke a storm. Because their entire control depends on your reaction. And when you give them none, their weapon turns into confusion. That's reversal, not through dominance, but through elegant disruption, where you take their energy, drain it, and watch them try to recalibrate while you remain still, unreadable, and already 2 moves ahead. The power of controlled presence. Being everywhere is weakness. Being selective is dominance. The most powerful people aren't constantly seen or heard. They're felt in absence and remembered in silence, because they've mastered the art of controlled presence. They show up when it matters, speak only when it shifts the room, and leave before their energy is diluted. Dark intelligence teaches you that your value isn't in how loud or available you are, it's in how intentional and rare you are. Because mystery builds tension, and tension creates influence. So the next time you feel the need to prove yourself by showing up too much, pause and remember, impact is not about volume. It's about precision. One presence, delivered with control, is louder than 1,000 empty appearances. Weaponize observation. Dark minds don't rush to speak, they collect data in silence. They study tone, micro-expressions, contradictions, patterns in word choice and energy. And while everyone else is distracted by the surface, they're storing what matters. Leverage. The ability to observe without needing to react is a weapon few can hold. It gives you power without announcing it, advantage without aggression, and clarity in situations where others get emotionally blind. Most people speak to fill silence. You let silence expose the room, because when you train yourself to read without revealing, to listen without signaling, to absorb without being pulled in, you become a force that can see through walls without ever breaking one down. Mastering. Detachment. Attachment makes you soft, reactive, and predictable. Dark intelligence knows this. So it trains you to care without clinging, to feel without depending, and to connect without becoming controlled, because the moment your peace is held hostage by someone else's approval, you've already sold your freedom. Detachment is not emptiness, it's clarity, the ability to walk away not because you're cold, but because you're centered, because your identity is no longer built on how others treat you, but on how you hold your ground no matter how they shift. The one who stays still when everything around them demands movement, that's the one nobody can move. Silence as a tactical weapon. Silence isn't just the absence of noise, it's a calculated space where power is built and perception is controlled. When you stop speaking, people fill in the blanks with their own fear, guilt, or curiosity. And that's where dark intelligence strikes not by force, but by restraint. The one who speaks less holds more control, because every silence creates tension, and tension commands attention. So while others rush to explain, to defend, to prove, you pause not because you have nothing to say, but because you've already said everything by not saying it. Silence lets you hear what others reveal, exposes the cracks in their mask, and most of all, makes your presence heavier than any words ever could. Tactical disappearance. Disappearing isn't weakness, it's strategy. When you withdraw without warning, you shift the energy, you break their rhythm, and you force people to confront the version of you they thought they had access to forever. Dark intelligence knows when to vanish, not out of spite, but out of calculation, to observe who notices, who panics, who stays silent, and who starts mimicking your energy to pull you back. This isn't revenge, it's data collection. Because presence reveals patterns, but absence reveals truth. And when you return, you're no longer returning as the same person, you're returning with perspective, leverage, and the confidence of knowing who actually deserved your presence in the first place. Boundaries without emotion. Real boundaries don't need loud explanations or angry reactions. They are silent walls made of clarity and consequence. And the darker your intelligence gets, the cleaner your lines become. You don't raise your voice when someone crosses the line, you raise your price. You raise your distance. And most importantly, you raise your standard of access. People learn how to treat you not by what you tolerate once, but by what you never allow twice. And when you enforce boundaries without emotional turbulence, you shift from being liked to being respected, because emotional boundaries backed by discipline are harder to push than any spoken rule. And that's how you protect your energy without even looking defensive. Mental redirection. When someone tries to corner you emotionally, socially, or psychologically, you don't resist them head on, you redirect. Redirection is the art of shifting focus without revealing resistance, of moving the energy away from conflict and into silence, or changing the subject with such smooth confidence that the other person forgets what they were even trying to control. Dark intelligence doesn't react to pressure, it absorbs it, turns it sideways, and hands it back disguised as calm. This is how you win without defending, how you move without tension, how you stay above while they spiral below, by never giving them the response they built their plan around.